Okay. Want to introduce myself. I'm Rita Berry. I'm the president of Westcreek, and I want to introduce the Oakville Committee, the people that went out and lost and helped set up and got the information out there. Valerie Campbell, you want to come up here so the people on Zoom can see you? John Mendenhall, Jack Schultz, Barb Huffman, and Marcia Justice. And our arborist, Jim. James Rooney. You don't forgot. Okay. So we're going to turn the meeting over to Jim and let him tell you what we found out. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you all for being here, very, very much. I think on a Monday night at about 7:30, I imagine there's a lot of other things you probably do. Welcome to everyone on Zoom. It's hard to stand here and think about how much this disease not only has impacted your neighborhood, but also communities statewide and also nationwide. How long have you all lived in this community? Who's lived here greater than 20 years? Less than 5 years. I got you. So you're probably, if you lived here for any period of time, I don't think Oakville is a mystery to you all. I think it's not a new thing you need to learn the details on. As much as maybe a new community out in the hill country that has just come online, you find that the way that if you go to rural Texas now, remember rural Texas is really changing. We have all these 200-acre goat ranches now that are being parcelized or fragmented into smaller 10, 15, 20-acre lots. And way back when I started working in Oakville in Texas, I think the ranchers were interested in why the trees were dying. But, they were sad to say goodbye to trees, but they're also, they like grass trees. They like grass too. So there wasn't a lot of concern. But the drastic thing is now how much it's changed. The value system is changing. Suddenly those parcels of land out in Westcreek County that only goes to the run now are parcel of land, 50 acres, every single tree is important. So that's really not different from here. Studies at Texas A&M a while back showed that in Austin, trees comprise between 13 and 19% of the property value. And that's really not, that's probably conservative right now, but there's really no question that trees enhance property. Trees enhance neighborhoods. Trees are important. And I think that's why we're all here at 7:30 when we could be doing something else. But I want to thank the Neighborhood Association for conducting this survey. And it's more of an assessment. We went through, and one of the things that we did was try to come up with a comprehensive view, not just where Oakville is right now, but where has it been, where is it now, and where is it going? And I think that's the information that the assessment needed to be able to communicate with you all as to where your efforts in prevention and awareness need to go in the neighborhood. And it's key. Awareness is key. Knowledge is key. And so now we're going to go through. We're going to go through a quick slideshow. And after the introductory comments, we'll quit talking. But the assessment, we'll talk about the objective and the goals. And I wanted to know what kind of a tenured audience we had with Oakville, how much experience, because I think it would dictate whether I need to go through the next hour explaining what Oakville is, the biology. And I think tonight, just for sake of time, I'm going to go through it. I'm going to touch on some of the most important things that you need to know about Oakville, but also point to people in the audience here, but also on Zoom to website sources of information. And more importantly, I wanted to go through this and look at the assessment and help you all identify where the areas of concerns are in the neighborhood with regard to Oak Wilt, where it's been, and more importantly, what kind of plan of action. If you're a homeowner in this neighborhood, what's the plan of action for Oak Wilt if Oak Wilt has been identified nearby? Who do I call? What should I be worried about? And what's the protocol to make sure that if my tree can be treated or saved, that I do it? And hopefully tonight we'll be able to address a lot of that. But just tonight's agenda is the objective goal. The refresher course, I'm going to point you to texasoakwilt.org. You'll probably touch base there and take a look at some of the things on the website. But then we want to get to the assessment and look at the maps and kind of go over the findings and make sure before we adjourn tonight that we have a lot better feel for Oak Wilt, where it is, and a better idea of what a plan of action might be, not only by the neighborhood, but also by individuals. So simply the objective is Rita joined the Midnight Oil and wrote up a grant for the city. Congratulations. And then I got a phone call asking if I wanted to come and walk the street of Westcreek. And it was good, and thank you for all the folks who did walk it with us. Can you put this on? Sure. There we go. But I don't have a much better mic. Okay. So I can interfere with my lip. But anyway, the objective was to use this grant to get a snapshot, a comprehensive view of the neighborhood. Again, not only where Oak Wilt is, but where has it been, where is it now, and also, most importantly, where is it going? And if you're a homeowner here, how do you need to respond accordingly? The maps you'll see that I have broken out, I'll show it here in a second. We have orange, red, yellow. What do they mean? And we'll go through that. But the goal is to make sure that from this comprehensive assessment, that the neighborhood has the information to be able to make intelligent decisions as to where to target your resources as far as knowledge and awareness with regard to Oak Wilt for all the neighbors in the neighborhood.
texasoakwilt.org. Can I get to this? No, okay. texasoakwilt.org is a website that's been around for quite a while. It was put together by the Texas A&M Forest Service in cooperation with a lot of the other groups, tree care groups, the International Society of Arboriculture Texas chapter. And it seemed the idea was it would become a one-stop shop for Oak Wilt. So if you live in Texas, you want to know about Oak Wilt, you want to find out whether does Oak Wilt actually spread through the smoke? What should I do with firewood? My neighbor just pruned their trees. Who do I call? What do I do? Oak Wilt has moved through our neighborhood. What kind of trees should I plant? Every consideration is in there. And one of the most important things is in conjunction with this website, the Texas A&M Forest Service worked with the International Society of Arboriculture to do a certification or a qualification course for certified arborists. Certified arborists could go through an intensive 2-day course conducted by the Forest Service and become Texas Oak Wilt qualified. So the idea was to keep you all out of the phone book. You don't want someone who mows the grass treating your trees and vice versa. And I think that was a really good effort to make sure that you all will be able to be directed to a group of certified, qualified people who have understanding and knowledge of tree care and this disease at a certain level. They can consult and they can also help you. But it's a big thing when all the information comes together. I know what to do, but who can do it for me? texasoakwilt.org. And again, A to Z, a one-stop shop. And if you have questions about Oak Wilt, I encourage you to visit. Yes. I don't know. I don't know.
He was on a list when he's talking about A&M's list. When I started down the list.
And I went through that brutal. I went through that brutal screening process, and the interesting thing was I have colleagues that live here. When I moved down from Minneapolis nearly 30 years ago out of Dutch elm disease to work in Oak Wilt in Texas, in Austin, I had colleagues that were in the Oak Wilt program before me. As a matter of fact, one is here tonight. Carl Schattenberg is in the background. And if I say something right, Carl's in the background, I'll go on like this, but if he doesn't agree with me, he'll do that. So, yeah, that's kidding. Jim Rogers, but the really interesting thing when I started with the City of Austin Parks and Recreation Department, Carl moved on to Austin Energy and I took your job. And I was the Oak Wilt coordinator for the City of Austin for 4 years, working in conjunction with the Forest Service. But one of the very first projects that I did was here. The trench on Morning Dew was mine. So I had a long association with the neighborhood, and I just lucked out when Rita pulled my name from the list. And
We have a lot of people that
yes,
want to participate.
and they are. And like I said, there's a lot of qualified people out there. I was honored to be chosen. And the thing is that after this presentation, Oak Wilt's not going to go away. And I think everyone understands that one person can't do it all. So that's why we wanted to get together, pull the ISA in with the Texas Forest Service and come up with lists and updated schedules of trees, the science, that information that I think you all needed. But it's really kind of remarkable how 28 years ago, 27 years ago, that's how long it's been. When that project took place, Oak Wilt has continued to spread in the neighborhood. And one thing that really set me down, it really shouldn't have, was when we started walking the streets. We saw areas where Oak Wilt was killing trees. They were actively symptomatic with the veinal necrosis, the leaves. Trees that were newly killed, they were dying. So we knew where the areas of active spread were. But as we started walking the street, there really wasn't a whole lot to look at when you got into the neighborhood. And we'll talk about that tonight, but it's just amazing after almost 3 decades how Oak Wilt will creep through a neighborhood, take trees in a 50-foot radius at a time. And in 30 years, you have a quarter-mile radius on a spread zone. And what I was looking for now were not only the dead trees, but also where the tree canopy of native live oaks was missing. And we tried to capture some of that. It was pretty hard to do because we were pretty much restricted to the city right away. And I want to thank everyone who saw us and took mercy on us and let me come in the backyard and look around. But fortunately, the homes are together, and if the trees are big, we had a pretty good idea what was going on probably in the backyard. But it was a lot of walking, and I said, in order to get the assessment that we had to pretty much walk all those streets, which was nearly 40, I think. This was the map that came from the City of Austin. It showed Oak Wilt conformations in the last 10 years. Now, I'm not really sure what the time span on this was, but way back when we were looking at Oak Wilt here, that's where the first tree became infected. And these areas of Oak Wilt, these red dots, are newly infected or recently killed trees. And I saw this map and I kind of slid it to the side until my assessment was over. And then I tried to put them together just to see how they come together. And it was accurate. It was really accurate. And this is what we call the area of concern right here. You'll see on the map later on. We have trees flaring up here. But the interesting thing is we have active spread there. We have spread up here. And these aren't two separate centers. I'm pretty sure they're connected. Gives you an idea of how quickly Oak Wilt in 30 years has moved through the neighborhood, up and down. And I wish I could just say, yep, this is the map right here. This is what you need to be concerned about. Have a good night, and we'll go. But unfortunately, fortunately, the comprehensive survey showed a different picture, and I found it rather remarkable that from an epicenter that started right in here, the yellow, you're going to see there's another map over here, represents, this is an area of pre-existing Oak Wilt where the infection front over 30 years has passed. And like I said, we walked the streets And what I looked for was, it's not an exact map, but it shows areas that I felt were absent of native live oak canopy. And I've talked to people on the streets, and they point down the street and said it came from that way, right? And it has a very subtle way of, again, creeping. It'll move a little bit. 3 or 4 trees are removed. Everyone watch the trees come out, feel bad, and time goes on, people forget. People move out, new people come in, and you kind of lose track. And trees go out, and people stop paying attention. But I think when you walk up and down these streets, you'll see what I mean. There's one little area right here. This is Steel, Porsche, Smith Oak, and then Honeydew Terrace. And I'm thinking that it was probably the utilities in the streets that maybe made a little barrier right here. But there's like a little island of green. And you go up and down these streets, you can see where trees weren't going. But a couple of things I want you to be aware of. Again, this is the footprint. This is the older oak wilt center that has moved out. And these areas are characterized by tree removals. They're characterized by replanting, lots of replanted trees in the streets and the right of ways around the houses. And again, lack of canopy cover. But again, the spread goes out and it slows down, and you find the occurrences of new oak wilt are relatively low. It's spread through, so what we're looking for is the active front of the disease. Now, even though the disease has passed through these areas, I've highlighted areas right now where there still are residual areas of trees dying. You can look at this like a wildfire. There's a wildfire front, which is right here. And everything behind it is smoking and smoldering, and the active fire is out, but it still has these hot spots. And these are some of the areas I want you all to be aware of. So these are the older areas, but there's about 150-foot perimeter around these areas that I highlighted in yellow, and these are monitor areas. Even though oak wilt has moved through, you don't see active flare-ups or areas of mortality like you do on the infection front. There's still a possibility that oak wilt in these community root systems that harbor in these live oaks can flare up again. You can have a smoldering ember that kind of flares out again. So it's important to keep an eye out on the edges over here. Need to maintain preventative protocols when you're working with trees. But again, a lot of the significant threat is over. And just because I think this is it Jay's Lane right here? So if you live in Jay's Lane, this is kind of it doesn't really accurately present it, but you're not out of the woods. You're actually right in the middle of it. So even though you look like you may have a glimmer of hope, I think the computer probably should have turned you yellow too. So if you're out there, you came close, but not quite. But what we're interested now is, this is where oak wilt has been. What we want to know right now is, where is it now and what does it hold for the future? These areas that you see that are lit up here, these little white dots, again, are areas of recent mortality within the last 6 to 12 weeks. And this is what we call the edge of the active infection